Well, it's Tuesday. I'm Greg Bishop, editor for the Center Square, Illinois. This is Illinois in Focus Daily. And we've got a couple of big things to tackle with Illinois in Focus, and that is what happened over in Washington, D.C. with Illinois Attorney General Kwame Raoul joining with other Democratic attorneys general from across the country with Democrats for a spotlight hearing, while in a separate hearing you had Attorney General Pam Bondi talking about the Trump administration's budget for the U.S. Department of Justice and some interesting parallels between those two separate hearings. So we'll actually be delving into that. But we've also got to talk about a story that was published to the Center Square on Friday that we didn't get to yesterday concerning Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, critical of the Trump administration's veteran affairs. And the Center Square's Brett Rowland got a response from the VA. We'll share that with you as well. But then we also have to talk about the latest in litigation against Illinois gun laws. We've been tracking the gun ban case, and you've got the states that's set to reply in 4 days, I believe. July 28th is when they have to reply with the final reply briefs. But that's not the case we're going to be looking at today. We're going to be looking at instead the case challenging Illinois' gun manufacturer liability law that was signed back in 2023. Well, we've got some of the latest in that as well, including the plaintiffs in that case, the National Shooting Sports Foundation, wanting to file a supplemental to their filing that takes into account the U.S. Supreme Court's recent case slapping down the lawsuit that Mexico had against gun manufacturers. We've got the state's response to that coming up here as well. So those are some of the things we're going to be tackling today with Illinois in Focus Daily. I want to remind you to get the podcast. If you can't listen live and you're driving around and you can't watch while you're driving, get the podcast where you get podcasts. Just search Illinois in Focus and you'll be able to find that. Or another way to do it, go to thecentersquare.com, where you can scroll down and find the podcast right there on the homepage on the right side, and you can subscribe to it that way on a couple of different formats, including Apple and Spotify. But while you're at thecentersquare.com, get the newsletter. Sign up for it today, and you'll be able to get the headlines in your inbox from Illinois, but also from our national page as well, where you can see some of those headlines. So make it happen, all right? Stay informed with the Center Square right here on YouTube or at thecentersquare.com. Follow us on X and other social media accounts. And you can follow me anywhere. Just search Bishop on Air. All right, we've got to get into the latest here of what was going on with the conversation around rule of law, the Trump administration's executive orders, the battles that attorneys general are having in court, and U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi saying that it's a new era with President Donald Trump. But we can't not get by this morning without talking about the international situation where you had, over the weekend, President Trump target Iran nuclear facilities. Then Iran attempted to strike a U.S. military base in Qatar over the past 24 hours. And then also reports that Iran struck a residential area in Israel after President Trump announced that Iran and Israel are going to enter a ceasefire. But then this morning, the president dropped an expletive when being asked in transit about the situation between Iran and Israel, given that they had the ceasefire, but a ceasefire obviously didn't take. The president dropped an expletive. If you haven't seen that video this morning, we're not going to air it here, but he pretty much said that these two countries have been fighting so long, they don't know what the blank they're doing. So you might be able to find that video circulating all over the interwebs, but just wanted to kind of put that out there. That's kind of where we're at right now in this wild thing we called life. It is Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Wake up with us each and every weekday morning and get the latest with Illinois in Focus Daily.
I serve the rule of law. I don't serve the governor. I do represent the governor. I represent the agencies within state, but I serve the rule of law. And I take that distinction very seriously. And I think that the U.S. Attorney General should operate with the same sort of, she shouldn't be loyal to the president, but she should be loyal to the rule of law.
They were arresting peaceful protesters, the Biden administration, at abortion facilities. No longer. They targeted Catholics at church services. No longer. No longer will parents be arrested at school board meetings because they care about their children. That has ended under this department.
It's back and forth at separate congressional hearings yesterday, focused on the rule of law and the U.S. Department of Justice. Good morning, it's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. You saw there Illinois Attorney General Kwame Raoul and U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi testifying there in front of separate committees. One was a Democrat-led, what they called a spotlight committee, and it was looking at what they alleged were the abuses under the Trump administration and the battles in court that states' attorneys general were having. So that was a separate hearing that was going on. U.S. Senator Dick Durbin essentially bringing that gathering together with members of the Senate and the House that were Democrats, and they only brought Democrat attorney generals in, so there weren't any Republicans involved in that spotlight hearing. But then you had another U.S. House Appropriations Committee hearing going on with Pam Bondi separate. So it was interesting to see these split screen and how they were playing out. Senator Durbin, during the spotlight hearing, here he is, senior senator from Illinois, laying out his opening of why this is an important hearing, he said.
The Trump administration has removed dozens of senior officials with decades of national security experience and placed a 22-year-old recent college graduate with no threat prevention experience in charge of our primary terrorism prevention center. In our dangerous world, this dereliction is especially troubling. The Justice and Homeland Security Department have diverted thousands of law enforcement agents away from combating drug trafficking, terrorism, violent crimes against children, cyber crimes, and gun violence to participate in a mass deportation campaign. And now the Trump administration is fighting to deny birthright citizenship to children born in the United States to non-citizens, despite the clear language of the 14th Amendment. I would ask Donald Trump why he thinks he can pursue what is a clear violation of our Constitution.
So Durbin obviously laying out a variety of things, from immigration to executive orders. He said that attorneys general from across the country, Democrats, are going after the Trump administration in courts.
More executive orders issued by this president than any president in modern memory. Flooding the zone is what they call it. We have to respond. They are also stepping up to protect LGBTQ plus rights, voting rights, public education, fighting to push back against the terrorizing of our immigrant neighbors and Trump's transparent efforts to orchestrate a military takeover of the cities.
Now, we'll talk about that with the National Guard back and forth a bit later on, but that was part of Durbin's opening. He then welcomed in, several Democratic attorneys general, including Kwame Raoul from the state of Illinois.
Today, I want to speak clearly and factually about three specific areas where the Trump administration's actions have had a deeply harmful impact: tariffs, education funding, and diversity, equity, and inclusion.
He went on to discuss the tariff situation. He says that the Trump administration went about imposing tariffs unconstitutionally.
This is indeed the first time in American history that a president has imposed tariffs based on IEEPA, and for good reason. It does not give the president the power to impose these tariffs. Two courts have so far examined the merits of these claims, and both have agreed that the imposition of these tariffs is an unlawful use of presidential power. International trade is essential to states' economies. The administration's tariffs hurt small businesses that rely on international imports and will make it more difficult for our residents to purchase the basic goods they need at affordable prices.
So the tariff situation top of mind for Raul and trying to block the imposition of tariffs. He's also critical of the Trump administration's take on DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion.
We know that the president's claims about diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility are simply untrue, factually and legally. Nonetheless, they are harmful. I'm proud to say that my state AG colleagues and I have been tirelessly fighting back against the Trump administration's constitutional and unlawful actions.
So we had an opportunity to answer a variety of questions. Democratic U.S. Congressman Jamie Raskin asked about who Raul serves, right? Because, listen, you've got these state attorneys general are elected for the vast majority of them, I believe. And then when it comes to the U.S. Attorney General, that's not a nationwide office that's on a ballot anywhere. That's at the prerogative of whoever is elected president of the United States. But Raul says that despite that U.S. Attorney General being appointed by the president of the United States, they shouldn't be loyal to the president.
I serve as the Attorney General of the state of Illinois, and in Illinois, I am independently elected from the governor, and by way of that, I serve the rule of law. I don't serve the governor. I do represent the governor. I represent the agencies within state, but I serve the rule of law, and I take that distinction very seriously, and I think that the U.S. Attorney General should operate with the same sort of she shouldn't be loyal to the president, but she should be loyal to the rule of law. That does not mean you're not representing the government and the administration, but you have to do so within the bounds of the rule of law, and we take that very seriously.
Is there any one of you who would describe your job as being the governor's lawyer? Exclusively in any way? Okay.
So Raul said no, even though, again, Raul, every time the governor gets sued, he's right there with his team to defend the governor's actions. I mean, look at the gun ban challenge, for instance. That was a lawsuit against Governor J.B. Pritzker, and Kwame Raul comes in, and he's essentially running that case. You've got the laws being challenged about sanctuary state policies. Kwame Raul's there defending the governor in that case. So interesting to hear that reaction. But other questions came up during this Democrat spotlight of, immigration enforcement, the Trump administration's executive orders concerning funding, and in particular, a question was asked about withholding FEMA funding from states that don't enforce immigration law for the federal government.
In Illinois, as in many Midwestern states, we have tornadoes that have devastating impacts in central Illinois. What connection that has with the immigration enforcement when families are looking for help from their federal and state government to respond to emergencies? None. And just as we've acted in other matters where, again, the administration has acted inconsistent with federal law, with the laws that you all have put in place in Illinois v. FEMA. The administration has done it again, trying to leverage their goal of having an aggressive immigration enforcement, or trying to leverage the need that communities have when responding to emergencies to advance their immigration agenda, is, I think, is again unconscionable, and it's unlawful.
So Raul laying out that the tactics the Trump administration are employing, he says, are unlawful. As far as the Guard, the question came up, especially about California and the National Guard there being directed by the Trump administration to protect federal facilities and personnel when they're enforcing immigration. Where's that going to happen elsewhere? Could it happen in Illinois, for instance? Here's Raul.
I disagree with the interpretation of the Ninth Circuit with regards to basically rendering the governor's power of having the power to consent to the activation of the Guard in our respective states. I've been in touch with our governor with regards to our preparation in the state of Illinois. Unfortunately, the Trump administration has politicized his prioritization of states that are being targeted for aggressive immigration enforcement based on party affiliation, not on general immigration policy. We continue to try to litigate the best we can.
So he's, of course, talking about the lawsuit that Illinois joined in with California to challenge the Trump administration taking the National Guard to protect federal personnel and property because people were rioting in the streets of L.A. And local and state police were having some issues getting control of it. And the Ninth Circuit essentially slapped down a preliminary injunction that the state of California and others won, so that injunction's not in place, and that's where Raul says, they're still going to fight in court over that. Again, this hearing with the Democrat spotlight, all Democrats talking about the Trump administration and their fight against him in court, and the victories they've had and the losses they've had in court when it comes to funding and the National Guard situation and immigration. Pam Bondi, across the way, in a separate hearing, U.S. House Appropriations hearing, was talking about protecting law enforcement in the face of rioters who are acting violently towards them.
Yeah, thank you. To California specifically, and we have made it very clear. If you spit, I believe it was an ICE officer, someone spit on him, we charge them federally. We will charge you if you spit on a law enforcement officer. If you loot under the Hobbs Act, that is a robbery, and we will charge you with robbery. We are going after the maximum penalty federally for anyone who touches a federal agent, and we are also going to protect our state and local law enforcement agencies and officers. The men and women every day around this country, whether it's a blue or red or purple state, are out there fighting crime. That's what they care about. They care about keeping every single one of us safe. That's what they're doing. They care about preventing drug abuse, drug overdoses throughout this country. And they jeopardize their lives every single day to keep us safe. And we are going to do everything in our power to fight for them.
Do you think that these sanctuary jurisdictions, these cities or states, should be receiving law enforcement grants if they refuse to uphold the law?
That's pending litigation, Congressman, and I can't discuss that right now.
So you got you've got the question about, for instance, withholding federal funds when it comes to enforcing immigration law, and it's current litigation. She can't comment on it. Again, that was at a separate hearing from where Raul was. But back to the Raul hearing, you had Senator Dick Durbin lay out his criticism about the deportation efforts he's witnessed under the Trump administration.
We're not talking about murderers, terrorists, rapists, people with serious mental illness. You remember the litany that's been recounted to us by President Trump over and over. These are people who are trying to follow the law of America and get their day in court. And it's an awesome process to follow.
And he says he went to a recent hearing and saw some of it firsthand. Raul responding to the issue of the deportation efforts.
The notion that the practices being used in Chicago and other municipalities to have some of those who have been complying with the immigration processes and responding to notices to appear and then being detained as a result of them complying with the immigration process is unconscionable.
So that's what some of the people in LA were, protesting, that allegation that there was deceptive practices, and alleged that's happened in Chicago as well. But Raul says that he's in court defending the Trust Act, the Way Forward Act. These are the state's migrant sanctuary policies.
As you know, I am defending what we call the Trust Act within the state of Illinois, which makes certain that our law enforcement resources are not misused for immigration enforcement processes. I know the administration has defined their efforts on immigration as to be targeted towards criminals, but the evidence with regards to those detained reflect a different story.
Now, back to the hearing with Pam Bondi, the U.S. Attorney General. It was a House Appropriations hearing, and there were plenty of other questions other than just the spending of federal tax dollars for the Department of Justice. A lot of questions about the illegal immigration situation, and Bondi says she's visited the border in some areas, and it's shocking what she's seen.
I can tell you our prosecutors are indicting and charging illegal aliens constantly, violent crimes, rapes, thefts, many crimes throughout this country. And yes, our borders were wide open. And Congressman, back in September, I went to our border at Yuma, Arizona. In Yuma.
And she said it was shocking what she saw: licenses on the ground, fake IDs, and stuff like that. Just all kinds of things you, as a law enforcement officer, might be shocked by. But let's take a look here at some of the latest, because I mean the Democratic AGs were talking about the victories they've had of blocking the Trump administration from withholding funding for certain things like medical research or such. But there's also been some failures thus far, some losses. Here's one in particular that Illinois Congresswoman Delia Ramirez highlighted yesterday. She said the Supreme Court's actions allowing the Trump administration to disappear people to countries they are not from, where they could face abuse and torture without ensuring due process. Today's ruling is shameful, she said, and it takes us back to the worst parts of our history, times when we treated people like cargo, shipping them wherever those in power pleased without concern of their safety, rights, or well-being. So again, that's after the Supreme Court permitted the Trump administration to resume third country removals, like deportations to Sudan, with minimal notice. So you've got that as a, put that in the loss category for the Democrats trying to block the Trump administration from performing what the Trump administration believes are its duties. So you've got that. And again, here's another one that involves Illinois in particular. You've got that lawsuit that was filed, not just about challenging the sanctuary state status. That's still pending, and we're still waiting on some next steps in that case. But you had a separate case where the Department of Justice is challenging Illinois' E-Verify process, essentially saying that it's allowing for lax oversight of eligibility for workers when it comes to their immigration status. So yesterday, you had a motion filed by the state, by Kwame Raul, against the Department of Justice to dismiss that particular case, saying that they failed to state a claim. So that memo filed on behalf of Kwame Raul to essentially, reject the E-Verify case. So that's going to be continuing as well. So we'll be watching those lawsuits here with Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Wake up with us each and every weekday morning as we bring you the latest of what's going on in the land of Lincoln with Illinois in Focus Daily. Veteran Affairs Administration slamming Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker for falsely claiming vets could be denied care. This happened late last week with a tweet sent out by Governor J.B. Pritzker, a full-blown news release, and more. But then the Center Square got response from the Trump administration's Veterans Department. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Wake up with us each and every weekday morning. If you get the newsletter in your inbox like you should, you can see this headline. This is from Friday. VA slams Democrat Governor Pritzker for falsely claiming vets could be denied care. So let's go check out what the governor had to say. He said, "Our nation's heroes put their lives on the line to protect our way of life. We owe them every bit of support we offer." He goes on to say that Trump wants to deny veterans health care because of who they love or voted for. Illinois will protect the benefits they've earned. And he links up on his X account to this news release, directing state agencies to activate resources for veterans amid reports of Trump administration threatening veterans health care. So he talks about reports the Trump administration's proposing rules that would allow VA providers to deny military veterans health care based on their marital status and political affiliation. Governor J.B. Pritzker has directed key state agencies to take every available action to protect veterans' access to care. All right, so you can see there. Let's go to the story, though, that Illinois, the Center Square, Brett Rowland, he put together, one of our national investigative reporters. Let's just read through it here. He says the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs slammed Governor J.B. Pritzker about a mass email falsely claiming veterans could be denied care based on how they voted after the initial report had been changed, and both the VA and the White House said it was false. Now, Governor Pritzker, who has an eye on national politics, said that he told state agencies to take every action available to protect veterans' access to care after reports of the Trump administration's proposing rules that would allow VA providers to deny military veterans health care based on their marital status and political affiliation. VA officials said those reports were incorrect 3 days before Pritzker ordered state officials to take action. VA Secretary Doug Collins had publicly said the report was wrong. He said this is completely false. Goes on to say Governor Pritzker is clearly consuming too much disinformation and needs to go on a news diet. All right, so you've got a VA spokesperson that's saying this is completely and totally false. Governor Pritzker is clearly consuming too much information and needs to go on a news diet. Collins responded with a video message on Friday after The Guardian, a British news outlet, first reported the VA changes on Monday. Collins said earlier this week that The Guardian is now conducting an internal investigation into its fabricated VA story, a piece so recklessly false and unbelievable that even the reporter who wrote it can't defend it. Guardian reporter Aaron Glantz, who wrote the article, said that the story was based on internal documents which reveal the VA has rewritten its medical staff bylaws by removing language that explicitly prohibited doctors from discriminating against patients on their political beliefs or marital status, he added. He said that we've added additional context provided by the VA after publication. The headline to the Guardian article changed after publication. Even so, the news spread fast despite denials from the VA and the White House. Collins said in a video posted Friday the Guardian report was recklessly and maliciously false. Claimed recent changes to the Veterans Health Administration bylaws would allow VA to discriminate against veterans staff based on political affiliation and marital status. Let me be clear, VA does not tolerate discrimination on any grounds, including political affiliation or marital status. Pritzker blamed President Trump and the VA changes and said that he would protect veterans. Again, this is after this report's already been debunked. Our nation's heroes, Pritzker said, put their lives on the line to protect our way of life, and we owe them every bit of care we offer. The Trump administration wants to deny veterans health care because of who they voted for, and the state of Illinois will do everything in our power to protect the veterans and what they've earned, VA said. The Pritzker's actions and decisions to spread false reports should be denounced. Pritzker's irresponsible statements are driving veterans away from seeking potentially life-saving VA care. His actions deserve across-the-board condemnation. So haven't heard back from the governor's office from Friday afternoon when we wanted to get a response to the VA saying that Governor Pritzker needs to go on a news diet. He's consuming too much information. So that's just one of the things that you'll be able to see at thecentersquare.com/Illinois. VA slams Democrat Governor Pritzker for falsely claiming vets could be denied care. And that story will keep you updated if the governor ultimately reacts to that and the allegation of spreading misinformation based off bogus news reports. So here we go. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. And if you want that story and other stories, go to thecentersquare.com, click on newsletter. You'll be able to get that headline and other headlines every morning in your inbox as you wake up. And you can also join us here for Illinois in Focus Daily. Each and every weekday morning, live with you, and you can join the chats. It's pretty lively in there. A bunch of people having good conversations about what we're talking about. So go make that happen. It is Illinois in Focus Daily. As the National Shooting Sports Foundation files a request to add to their filing challenging the state's gun manufacturer liability law, saying, hey, look, the U.S. Supreme Court tossed out a case where Mexico is challenging gun manufacturers, so this case should also be tossed. Well, the state of Illinois responding to that motion. We'll get to that here with Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and wake up with us each and every weekday morning, bringing you the latest here on YouTube with The Center Square. So we've been tracking litigation against gun control efforts in the state of Illinois, and I don't think that there's going to be any slowdown of that, especially as you've got the Southern District of Illinois gun ban challenge that is now in the appeals court on final judgment after a district judge said that the gun ban was unconstitutional, and even the U.S. Department of Justice filing on behalf of the plaintiffs in the appeals court saying that the gun ban is unconstitutional and pointing to all the recent U.S. Supreme Court stuff that the appeals court got wrong and that other courts across the country are getting wrong, they allege. So we've got that case that's still working through, and the state's going to be responding to the plaintiffs come 4 days from now. So July 28th, we should have that filing. We'll definitely unpack that here with Illinois in Focus Daily. We've also been tracking the Schoenthal case. That case is still pending a decision from the appeals courts. That's the challenge against Illinois' prohibition of carrying concealed firearms on mass transit. So that's in the appeals court after having public hearings, and they are going to have a decision soon. When courts move at their own pace, we'll keep you posted. But you've got this other case that's been matriculating for almost 2 years now, and that's the case challenging Illinois' gun manufacturer liability law. And the latest filings in that case, we're going to go through here. But if you go to thecentersquare.com, you'll be able to find some of these in the archives. And again, this is all free. We don't charge you to go and check this out, so you can actually see this for yourself. But this is from April of 2023. Illinois firearms industry vulnerable to lawsuits under new law. And this, again, back in April of 2023, it was House Bill 218. Governor Pritzker signed that on the heels of the Illinois Supreme Court upholding the state's gun ban. He said that we hold opioid manufacturers accountable, vaping companies accountable, predatory lenders accountable. Gun manufacturers shouldn't get to hide from the law, and now they won't be able to. Here's to an Illinois where everyone feels safe in every corner of our great state. So he went ahead and signed that measure. This is one of the questions of how does this interact with federal law? You've got federal laws that essentially say you can't have lawsuits against, firearms industry for liability issues, and you even had that case coming through the U.S. Supreme Court that dealt with this as well. But after the governor signed that, you did have a lawsuit that was filed rather rapidly. So federal law or federal judge was assigned to the lawsuit in the firearms liability law. Again, House Bill 218 passed in April of 2023. But here we are. We've got the latest twists and turns, and we're going to go through some of these filings as we make it through the National Shooting Sports Foundation's lawsuit against the state's gun manufacturer liability law, allowing for people to sue gun manufacturers for third party and how they use it. So earlier this month, June 10th, there was a motion to file a supplemental authority. Now, what the supplemental authority is by the plaintiffs is they say, hey, there's this other ruling from a different court that directly affects what we're doing here. So they wanted to put in the Smith & Wesson versus the government of Mexico, essentially, Estados Unidos Mexicanos. And that was the U.S. Supreme Court that ultimately sided with the gun manufacturers there just a handful of weeks ago. Then the following day, you have an order granting the motion for that supplemental authority. So the judge in the Northern District Federal Courts handling this case from the National Shooting Sports Foundation, Judge Stacey Yandel, went ahead and said that the authority to file that supplemental filing is granted. So it's been filed. But we have a response here with the motion to leave to essentially deny that. So let's go through these two documents here. All right. So we'll first look at the National Shooting Sports Foundation's filing to have this supplemental authority. It says that August 14th, they allege that House Bill 218 authorizes state action to the Protection of Lawful Commerce Act. Then you had plaintiffs file a preliminary injunction for that. Defendants filed opposition. Then June 5th, fast forward all the way to 2025, the U.S. Supreme Court issued a decision in Smith & Wesson Brands versus Estados Unidos Mexicanos. A copy of that opinion is attached. Smith & Wesson, the Mexican government, sued 7 American firearms manufacturers, alleging that they failed to exercise reasonable care to prevent trafficking of their guns into Mexico and are responsible for harms arising from the weapons misuse. 2 of Mexico's theories are directly relevant here. First, Mexico claimed the manufacturers had failed to impose the kind of controls of their distribution networks that would prevent illegal sales to Mexican traffickers. According to Mexico, the manufacturers needed to implement processes for monitoring or supervising their dealers' sales practices so as to minimize illegal sales or to traffickers. The Supreme Court rejected that theory. The problem with the theory was not, as with some other components of Mexico's allegations, that Mexico had not pleaded enough. The court was clear that the complaint alleges with sufficient plausibility that the manufacturers could do more than they do to figure out who those rogue dealers are and then to cut off their gun supply. The problem was with that theory itself. The PLACA prohibits efforts to hold manufacturers of lawful firearms liability under state law just for failing to make unaffiliated retailers follow the law. Yet that theory is indistinguishable from the reasonable controls theory HB 218 in the state statute codifies, under which manufacturers of lawful firearms may be held liable under Illinois law just for failing to implement reasonable procedures, safeguards, and business practices sufficient, among other things, prevents the sale of distribution of a firearm-related product to a straw purchaser or a person prohibited by law from possessing a firearm. Second, Mexico alleged the manufacturers made design and market decisions intended to stimulate cartel members' demand for their products. Mexico claimed the manufacturer's product of AR-15 rifles, AK-47 rifles, and 50 caliber sniper rifles, coupled with the marketing of those products in ways that make them attractive to criminals, contribute to a public nuisance south of the border. The Supreme Court rejected that theory in no uncertain terms because, quote, those products are both widely legal and bought by many ordinary consumers. Manufacturers cannot be charged with assisting in criminal acts just because Mexican cartel members like those guns too. Put differently, manufacturers cannot be held liable under state law just because they design and market lawful firearms and other legal products that criminals like. Once again, however, HB 218 in state law of Illinois codifies an indistinguishable theory. Plaintiffs respectfully request the court enter an order granting plaintiffs leave to file notice, and they were granted that. But let's take a look at what the state responded with. 3-page filing here. This was filed yesterday by the Illinois Attorney General, Kwame Raoul. It goes on to say that National Shooting Sports Foundation's motion offered notice to the U.S. Supreme Court's recent decision, Smith & Wesson brands versus Estados Unidos Mexicanos, arguing that it supports holding that Illinois' Firearm Industry Responsibility Act is invalid on its face. Raoul's office says it does not. Instead, Smith & Wesson's posture and facts are wholly inappropriate and deliver no support to the NSSF's novel effort to use the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act to invalidate the Firearm Industry Responsibility Act from Illinois. Raoul's filing says in Smith & Wesson, the government of Mexico named 7 firearm industry members as defendants in a lawsuit. The defendants asserted PLACA has a defense in that suit, and the court had to determine whether the action fell within one of PLACA's exceptions. The application of PLACA was properly litigated in the suit, as by its own terms, PLACA may be invoked when an industry member faces a qualified civil liability action in court. Here, by contrast, not a single NSSF member faces a qualified civil liability action filed by the Attorney General. Rather, NSSF attempts to turn PLACA on its head, using it as an offensive weapon to strike down an entire state statute, even prior to any state enforcement of the statute. Smith & Wesson did not involve, nor did it provide any support for such an unconventional use of PLACA. Furthermore, the court's holding in Smith & Wesson was straightforward and inapplicable to this case, Raoul's office said. Specifically, the court concluded that while PLACA's predicate exception, it permits a suit to be brought against a gun manufacturer that has aided and abetted a firearms violation and in doing so proximately caused the plaintiff's harm, the plaintiff in the case did not plausibly allege such aiding and abetting. This holding has no bearing on this case, Raoul said, which does not involve any allegations of aiding and abetting under PLACA's predicate exception. For these reasons, while the court should take notice of Smith & Wesson as an example of a defensive assertion of PLACA, the court should disregard NSSF's supplemental argument seeking to apply the holding of Smith & Wesson to this action. So that's the back and forth over how the Smith & Wesson v. Mexico case may impact the challenge that NSSF has against Illinois' firearm liability law. And again, this case was filed in April of 2023. Here we are 2 years after the fact, and we're still dealing with briefs, and this is all in the district court. This is not in the appeals court. And when you've got the state saying that nobody's been held liable under the state's firearm liability law, you do have in Cook County, the city of Chicago suing Glock, and I believe that case is still ongoing as well. However, I'm sure that some attorneys may be considering, if they haven't already, taking the U.S. Supreme Court case and filing a supplemental authority in that Cook County state-level case. So there's a lot to watch there, but that's the latest on the challenge against Illinois' firearm liability law with that filing that was made by Attorney General Kwame Raoul yesterday. I've been looking at the dockets for other cases, and we'll keep you posted. Again, the cases challenging the state's gun ban still ongoing, especially in the 7th Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals, as you've got the plaintiffs filing, and now the state has to reply as they're trying to defend the law after a district judge said, we've got a strong record here to show that the law is unconstitutional. Could that gun ban challenge be the next to go to the U.S. Supreme Court? We'll be watching. All right, it's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Wake up with us each and every weekday morning here for more Illinois in Focus Daily. That's all I got for you today. It's Tuesday, right? Yeah, 24th of June. We got Independence Day coming up. Holy moly. So obviously it's going to be an Independence Day, number 249, is that right? Next year is number 250? Oof. An election year as well? Man. Definitely going to be something you're going to want to stay tuned with Illinois in Focus Daily if you want to keep posted on what's going on. Especially during an election year. Get all the background here and quick, digestible. Get on with your day, and we'll keep you posted on what's going on. Get to thecentersquare.com, sign up for the newsletter, find the podcast where you get podcasts, just search Illinois in Focus. But wake up with us each and every weekday morning here for the live chats and the live video casts. Separate segments get posted later. You'll be able to stay plugged in with all of it, all right? I got to get out of here. Have yourself a wonderful rest of the day. We'll be back at it tomorrow with more Illinois in Focus Daily.
Go ahead.